Good morning. Welcome back to another beautiful sunny day here in eastern North Carolina, and today we're going to do the late summer garden tour that I've been talking about for a while now. Now, I'm going to walk around the entire property, give you a little rundown as to what's going on, and if I remember and have time, I'll probably try to do a couple of drone shots, because who doesn't like a drone shot? Real quick note, if you go to growingagreenfinger.com, and I believe it's down on the home page towards the bottom, I put in a new section called The Garden, and there you can find a map of the property and the layout basically of where everything is. So as I'm running around the garden here talking about what's growing, what's not growing, you can then see where you are, give you a better understanding of the property. That's all I got to say about that. Let's get to talking about what's here in the garden or on the deck. Well, let's start the tour about what's growing on the deck in the garden. Let's get moving. Okay, so here we still have my much abused succulents, which haven't done much except gotten some weeds in them. I really need to repot these and put them in better homes, take a little better care of them. Lemongrass, which I never got around to planting, surprisingly doing fairly well in these small, what are those, like 6-inch pots. These are some Dahlias growing here, and they looks like they just started flowering a bit. Let's see if I can get a close-up on that. Focus. There you go. Just started flowering. These are started from seed. They haven't done much all year long, but they may not now start producing. This is my Meyer lemon tree, and it hasn't grown a lot this year, but it hasn't died, and that's always important. I believe we have a couple of citronella plants here. Scraggly little things, haven't done much with them all year long. This is my other Meyer lemon tree. It is quite small. Still alive, doing well. And this is my Clementine orange tree. And this guy hasn't done much either, but again, still alive, so that's always a plus. Over here in this corner, we have strawberries, which produced somewhat well in the spring and then faded out over the summertime. I also have some in this tree here. What I'm probably going to do is dump out this plastic tree and then maybe refill it, maybe grow some salad in it for the fall. We'll see about that. Sorry about the shadow. Let's see if I can angle that better. Celery, which I started from a little nothing, has actually survived the summer. With the brutal heat in the pot. It is still doing its thing, so that's good. Next up we have the two cuttings that I took from New York, Boxwood cuttings. They're emerald green, emerald jewel Boxwoods, and they're doing well. Again, surviving the pot. Next we have two more Dahlias, Lady Liberty and Goodshink. I can't pronounce that. If I remember, I'll put it on the bottom. But they're still they're doing well, and if they continue to do well, maybe after the fall, probably next spring, I'll take them out of their pots and I'll divide them, and they'll go in the Dahlia garden themselves, or maybe into a bigger pot here up on the deck. Cutting over here, I have my 4 David Austin roses, which really need to get in the ground, and they will be in the next few, probably the next few weeks. The rose garden is starting to make some progress. So I just have to continue that progress. Down here, I have another Dahlia that I started from seed. The ones I started from seed this year were red Skin Dahlias. And it's doing okay-ish. I don't know what will happen to it. I don't even know if tubers are building underneath. If any of the redskins do have tubers building, I will turn around and probably keep them, divide those tubers, that kind of thing. Over here we have Lavender. It's a variegated variety. Still doing well in its pot. Over here, I have my red Norlin Potatoes, which I tried to start for a fall crop, but they don't seem to be doing too well, so that may be a scratch. I have 3 pots of rosemary, which survived the hot blazing summer that we've had here, and they're doing well. My large pot of mint, I believe this is spearmint, and that is it's looking a bit raggedy. It's been through a lot, the heat and all this summer, but it's still hanging in there. I'm thinking it needs to maybe go to a more partly shady spot, but again, it's hanging in there, and mint, I don't know. It's, give it a water and I don't think you'll ever kill it. Another lemongrass and this is a gardenia in a pot. And this is the cold frame. I have a snapdragon here growing. 3 seedlings that survived from my horrors. And then a bunch of pots that need to be cleaned out. There is some parsley that needs to probably go into the garden, but the rest of these pots need to be cleaned out, and the cold frame should, well, I'll keep the cold frame here on the deck for now, and probably use it next spring. When you walk out of the house, you're greeted with this pot. My wife put this together. It's looking tired, but it's still looking good. And we keep it watered, and it's doing its thing. Down at the bottom of the stairs, hiding in the shade here, I have 2 Hellebores. I will probably wind up getting more Hellebores over the winter, maybe early next spring. And yeah, they're doing well in the pots. I might want to take them out of the pots and looking to repot them maybe in bigger pots or even into the ground. I'm not sure about that yet, but for now they're doing well. Okay, so again, if you were looking at the map on my website, I don't believe I included this space on the map, but basically we're on the back side of the garage, across from the compost bins. This is the potting table area. I don't know if I'll keep this here long term. That's to be decided in the future, but for now this is where it's at. As you can see, my potted red Skin Dahlia doing quite well. I just noticed I have to do a couple of dead heads on it. I started 3 plants in there. They grew well, then they all faded down to virtually nothing, and now they're starting to resprout, which is good. So maybe I'll get some more blooms out of that throughout the fall. And I believe at this point there's probably some decent tubers down there, so I can either keep them in the pot, refresh the soil for next year, or I can turn around and put them in the ground, which is maybe what I'll do. I'm not sure. We'll get to that point when we get to that point. I have a lot of boxwood cuttings here. They will eventually go someplace else because they're taking up all the space on my potting table. I just have to find the home for them. I have some peacock orchids and irises and some privet hedges, basically odds and ends that need to go someplace in the garden, and they'll probably get planted out in the next few weeks. And that's probably about it for here. So let's move on to the rest of the, well, to the side of the house, and then we'll move to the front, and then we'll move out towards the vegetable, and just follow me. Okay, so here we have 3 bushes which I planted. This is essentially the property line to my property, and we have 3 bushes that I planted last winter, fall, spring, January, I believe. So over here is it's not a gardenia, it's something else, and I totally forget what it is. If I remember, I'll leave a link below, but it's doing well. This is a gardenia, and this is doing well. Put on quite a bit of growth this year, which is really nice. All of these bushes I have to come back and try to work with the grass because it's growing over the mulch, and that just may be a thing I let go eventually, but eventually I want to clean it up and make it look a little nicer. And then of course over here we have a copper top viburnum, which has really put on some nice growth, and it's turning, the leaves have these nice coppery tips here. Let me show you what's on the other side over by the deck. Okay, so over here, behind the other side of the garage, over by the deck, I have Blushing Bright Hydrangea. That one was planted, I want to say January. It's done fairly well. It looks like it has some black spot on it right now, but again, still surviving, growing, which is fabulous. And over here, I don't know if you could see it in the light, but I have an Incredible Hydrangea. It's growing well. Looks like it's putting on some branches. I'm hopeful that next spring I will get some beautiful flowers from it. So, but that's doing well as well. I can't remember the name of this variegated bush. It eludes me at the moment. And if I remember, I'll leave a thing below. It's wonderful. It's doing well. This spirea is growing well. I want to say spirea is growing slowly. I've never grown spirea before, but this guy is growing slowly. And at the end, I have an eponymous. and that guy has gotten chewed down pretty bad because the deer came along one night and decided they wanted a snack. It's still alive, it's still growing, it's just half the size of what it was. Such is life. Let's show you the rest of the side. Okay, here I have a red twig dogwood. That actually is putting on some decent growth. It did get nibbled on a little bit by the deer, but again, still doing pretty well. You can see some of the twigs are nice and red, and hopefully this winter they'll just be stunning as they're supposed to be. I just noticed that I have some fungal thing going on here, so I may give these a spray down with some neem oil. Over here I have an English boxwood. Very slow growing, hasn't done much for me, seems to have suffered a bit through the heat, so I may move its location in the early winter here, maybe December, into a spot where maybe it'll be happier and put on some more growth. And at the end I have an autumn carnation azalea. Now this did get nibbled on by the deer earlier in the year. It's bounced back and it's put on quite a bit of growth. So hopefully one day that fills out a nice big chunk over here. Let's go look at the crater. Now I'm standing in what is affectionately become known as the crater. And the crater is, if you're new to the channel, if you haven't seen anything that I've done before, when I moved into the house, there was a dead tree here. I had that tree removed. Now I would have had the stump ground down along with all the roots, but I was worried that there were utility lines passing underneath, because right in this direction here, that's basically where all the utilities get run underground. I could have had the company come out, I could have had them spray, etc., but in just digging with a shovel at 3-4 inches down, I've already discovered cable line, so I'm sure that there was other stuff. So what I decided to do is dig around the roots, leave the roots exposed. Sort of looks like a skeletal structure. And I put the fountain up on the stump. And then I decided to interplant. Now, one of the things, I do have to get in here and weed, because there's a lot of weeds that have grown in. But I took a lot of the excess soil and I put it up on what I call the mound. And I started planting up the mound this year. We have, I'll give you a close-up of all this in a second, but salvias and nicotinas, comfrinas. I have a lemongrass, which has gone bonkers since I put it into the ground. I just planted some Mexican sunflower. I don't know if they'll be ready or blooming in time. Again, we don't hit fall until late November maybe. So it doesn't, I don't think we get our first frost until about late November, but we'll see how the weather fares. And there's some milkweed and canna. So I'll do a close-up now of everything. I just kind of wanted to give you an overview of the crater. Okay, so we'll start on this side, and here we have an elephant ear. And it's growing quite well. I actually, if you can see, I put it between a couple of the roots. There was some space I could put that into. And as with anything in the crater here, this is a work in progress. Things change. The roots will eventually break down to the point where they just come out all together. I think the crater will always remain here in one form or another, but it will be a constantly evolving or changing space. Going up on the mound here, we have some salvia. They are all done flowering. They did well, and you can still see they're doing well. I have to trim up some of the grass around them. Over here, this is nicotina. I believe I had two varieties, and one was jasmine scented, and in the evening when the flowers are fully opened, it smelt magnificently. These have mostly gone to seed, or are going to seed. I don't know if you can see some of the seed heads there. And I'm just going to let them do their thing, and hopefully next spring I have a plethora more nicotina growing here on the mound, and then I'll just help fill out the space. Let's see. Where? Oh dear. Okay, this was one of my Mexican sunflowers, and so is that, and so is that. Apparently the deer like the Mexican sunflowers. So there'll be no Mexican sunflowers this fall. Because they're on the back side of the mound, I don't always see them, and I know I've had deer walk through the space recently, so yeah, okay, well, live and learn. Deer like Mexican sunflowers. On the other hand, they don't like the lemongrass, and the lemongrass has gotten huge. This was, I believe, just a couple of plants, and it has just, as you can see, just grown like crazy. I'll leave this here throughout the winter. I'll see what it does. Maybe I'll cut it back in the late winter, early spring. And if it survives and reflushes, so much the better. If it doesn't, maybe I'll just grow some more lemongrass from seed and replant it here. Over here, amongst the grasses, is a Coreopsis, and that has done well. It's done flowering. It's had its day in the sun, as it were. I'll leave that there, and it should re-blossom and re-spring come next spring. I do have to clean up a lot of the grasses here. The mound is never going to be grass-free. It's never going to be weed-free. But if I can keep it under control, I think that we can strike a happy balance. Over here, I have an Oxide Sunflower, and that has done quite well, spectacularly. The pollinators loved it. This thing was crawling with bees when it had its bees. But it has run its course. It is obviously done flowering. It'll just now sit here, and once it dies back in the later fall, I'll then cut it back, and then hopefully in the spring it'll turn around and bounce back. This is a grass which I do not remember the name of. It's supposed to get to about 10 foot tall, and it is lovely. It's doing well. So hopefully next year it does get to 10 foot tall. I just planted that this summer, early summer, I believe. Coming around to the front of the mound, here's the Oxide Sunflower. This is a milkweed. Let's see if I can see the tag. This is Ice Ballet Milkweed. And that was just had a couple of stalks on it up until about a month ago, and then it threw up these new stalks with leaves. No flowers this year, but hopefully next year it is just covered in sunflowers. Over here is another Comfrena. I just planted this recently. I don't think it's going to flower this year, or hopefully it does. Back in there, right there, is a Echinacea. It's hanging in there. It's never done anything spectacularly well, but hopefully next spring it sprouts up, takes off. This Comfrena here has done quite well. It's thrown up a couple of stalks of flowers already this year, and you can see it has a couple of more. So I should hopefully be able to enjoy that for the remainder of the summer into the fall. On the other side of the fountain, we have another elephant ear. And then again, this has been doing well. It's been throwing on a couple of branches, and it's also planted in between a couple of the roots. On the edge of the crater here, I have this lovely Cana. I can't remember the name. If I do remember, I'll post it below. But that has been flowering quite regularly, and it's looking pretty well. Over here I have another milkweed. This one is a swamp milkweed. It's only had a couple of stalks and hasn't done much, but it's still alive, so that's always a plus. And then here also on the very edge of the crater, I have some Salvia which I grew from seed. I don't remember the variety off the top of my head. And they've done well. They've put on some flowers. I think they're still have one little flower there. The camera will focus in on that. There you go. So, and we'll see what this does. I believe this is going to be an annual, not a perennial. But again, we'll see how that goes. Well, what will be fun is to come back in a few years' time and look at these videos and see the differences between then and now, or now and then and now. It'll be fun to see, hopefully, those differences, and hopefully in a few years these spaces have all grown quite considerably, because I will like to continue planting out the spaces, continuing to grow the spaces. I have lots of space to grow into, so we're going to do the front of the house now. I have two sections, one on either side of this porch. I'll be covering this section here, and then we'll get to the other section. Some of this, there have been some changes to this space since the last tour I've done, and there have been some successes and failures. So let's get into looking at that now. So starting off on the corner here, I have my lamb's ear, and then I have my, I always forget the name of this plant, but either way it is pretty sure dead. It was supposed to be heat tolerant, And oh, I believe this is Wormwood. Wormwood, yes. It's supposed to be heat tolerant, and I kept it watered, and it just looks like it has seen better days. If you guys have ever grown a wormwood and you've seen it in this kind of condition before, let me know in the comments. If I trim it back and cut it back, will it reflush? Do you think the plant is just dead? To me, it looks just dead, but sometimes plants can be tricky. Next to it, I have 3 red Skin Dahlias that I grew from seed. And so-so. If you saw my Dahlia tour, I mentioned that some of these, as you can even see here, are doing so-so, whereas this one here on the edge is doing quite well. Had sweet pea here, but the sweet pea did not do well. I do not believe sweet pea will do well here at all. I'm thinking maybe trying to start them early, super early next year, get them into the ground early in the spring, and then by early summer I think they have to come out because it starts getting too warm. This is a Lady Liberty Dahlia, which never grew. So sad. But all is not lost, because tucked in over here between the 2 boxwoods, I have a good shink. I don't know how to pronounce it, I'll put it below. But it's looking very, very nice as it opens up here. And then I have some golden ginkgo daylilies, some irises which are done, a sedum I do not know the variety of, but there's a bee on it. I don't know if you can see that. Loving it, loving the flowers right now. I have a pineapple lily, which is pretty much, it's just done. And then over here, let me step back a bit, I have 3 pawpaw trees. The 2 bigger ones really seem to be suffering with some sort of fungal disease, perhaps. Not sure. We had a very hot and humid summer, so that may be affecting them. The smaller one, which is down here, seem to have been doing better. So again, not sure why, but I will continue to monitor, maybe spray them with a little neem oil, and we'll see what happens from there. They may wind up going out into the orchard over the winter. I'm not sure. Well, again, we'll have to monitor these guys and see how they fare. Another pineapple lily. One of my low-growing shrub rose bushes, which I inherited when I purchased the house. You don't have to deadhead these guys. They just keep growing and growing, and on all the new growth they put on roses. Now this, again, if you're new to the channel, this one and the one on the other side of the front porch, I had cut back basically to the ground, leaving about 4 inches of growth on them, and they've rebloomed from there. So pretty interesting and exciting plant. Here is my apple tree. The apple tree will more than likely go into the orchard, or the planned orchard, this winter when it's dormant, and then hopefully it just continues to grow and do well throughout next year. Here is the other rose, shrub rose, and next to it I have 2 daylilies. These are Stella Dora Reblooming daylilies, and they've been doing pretty well. And then next to those, right there, I planted 3 daylilies, which I had gotten from a niece of mine locally. I don't know the variety, but I had them in pots on the potting bench forever, and now they're finally in the ground. If we pan over towards this side of the front bed, let me pan out a bit so you get a sense of the front bed here. This is what the rest of the front bed looks like. And then right up front here we have an agapanthus. And I've been looking to collect the seeds, but the seed pods, they don't go brown like normal seed pods. They just suddenly one day burst open, so I'll have to do some more homework on that. Perhaps I can capture some seeds from that, because I'd like to grow more of the agapanthus from seed. Some lilies tucked in there. I think I'm going to definitely have to move them. These boxwoods, I trimmed them back last December. They have put on quite a bit of growth, which is wonderful. And I'm going to take some more cuttings from them, because I want to, I'm going to need a lot of hedging. So, and then I'm going to give these guys a cut probably December, January. I'll give them another haircut into nice crisp balls. And over here, I have some more daylilies, and I have a batoni. And then over here next to it is a Shasta daisy with another pineapple On the other side of the gutter there, I have another pineapple lily. On the front walkway here, I have this large trellis. It's about 4 foot apart. Arbor right here. Whoop. And next to that is a crepe myrtle. The birds love to hide in the crepe myrtle and then swoop down to the bird feeder on the front porch there. But over here, I have an American Wisteria. So American Wisteria is not as invasive as the Chinese Wisteria. And I bought that as a little plant. And as you can see, it is doing quite well. Growing right up that trellis. So it did flower a little bit this year, and hopefully next spring I get a lot more flowers from it. Behind me here we have the lawn. Again, if you're new to the channel, this area in front of the house will remain lawn. On the one side, I will have boxwoods, which will come right down the length of the driveway. They'll probably be kept about 2 foot tall, and they'll just be cut in a nice rectangular shape. Very formal. And on the other side of the lawn, I will have flowering shrubs, azaleas, and probably I'm going to get some crepe myrtles, maybe some hibiscus. And they'll be along the other side of the lawn, and that'll be forward of the crater here. I don't know if you can barely see the crater in the shot. All the way up front, I don't know if you guys can see that in the thing. All the way up front, I have 2 pear trees. Words are hard. Pear trees. They seem to have gotten hit with a bit of black spot recently, and they're not, well, they look okay-ish, but I've had to treat them, and I don't know if this is going to be a thing that I'm going to have to constantly do because of the humidity, or, again, I've never grown pear trees in the south, but they are growing, they're still alive. We'll go take a look at them in a minute. Now, just in front of the crater, I have this one side of the property line, and along it I'm putting flowering shrubs. So the first one here is an azalea, and this is autumn carnation. The deer came by and gave it a little haircut recently. That's why it's so short. I will have to give it some more deer off spray, and that'll hopefully keep the deer off. Over here we have autumn royalty. Now the deer have not touched this azalea, which is odd because it's just a few feet away from the other one, but it's growing out quite well. It's doing its thing. All these azaleas, I believe, are supposed to get to about 4 foot by 4 foot. So hopefully that'll happen the next few years. Growing in a very strange pattern and being currently occupied by fire ants is another azalea. This one is Autumn Sangria Azalea. So it's flowered. The deer haven't eaten it, and the fire ants don't seem to be affecting it too much. When the weather cools off, I will probably come back in here, clean it up a bit, maybe add a little more mulch around it. Over here, buried in the grass, because the grass at this particular spot seems to grow like wildfire, is another azalea. And so we can get the camera to lighten that up there. So on this one, the deer trimmed back in January, February, and I've been spraying it with the deer off, and it seems to be keeping the deer off of it. So, and it has put some growth back on. That's a good thing, and hopefully if I can keep up with the deer off throughout the winter, the deer will leave these azaleas alone and they will continue to grow and flush out. Here are my 2 pear trees. They're at the front of the property. And if I do a close-up on this guy, so these are some new leaves, and you can see the black spot on them. I've been treating this with a fungicide and some neem oil, and the plant seems to be responding well. I have some leaves without any black spot on them, so that's a good thing. And I think if I just keep treating these guys for the rest of the year, they should be good, and hopefully they'll continue to grow next year. I may even get some flowers on them next spring. This tree here did a particularly odd thing. Because it was stressed, it threw up this one long branch. I'll trim him back down to the height of the rest of them in the winter time when the plant goes dormant. But they've been doing pretty well. And along over here you can see some of those boxwoods I was talking about. As they fill out, again, they'll fill out eventually. They'll get together, and then I'll trim them into a nice shape. And I still have to go all the way down the driveway here, so I'll need a lot more boxwoods to do that. Okay, now I'm standing in what hopefully will eventually be the flower garden. Now it'll be an area devoted strictly to flowers, but as you can see, there's nothing here. That post there marks the north side of the garden. That will be the south side of the garden. And in between from that post over to the vegetable garden is what will be the grand walkway. Again, if you go to my website, growinggreenfinger.com, underneath the section The Garden, I give a rundown of all these different areas so you can kind of get a figure or an idea as to where everything is. Back where that dark spot of ground is, there was a clump of trees there. I had them removed, and that is basically the area where the orchard is going to go. Eventually you're going to have the orchard, which I'll probably start planting out this winter I should say. That'll be the orchard. And ahead of it, where I'm standing here, will be the flower garden, and the vegetable garden is over here, so we'll get to that one next. Before we get into the vegetable garden, I just wanted to point out or mention here in the front of the vegetable garden, currently I have my dahlias growing. Hopefully next year they'll be growing in a corner of the flower garden and in their own little space. That has yet to be built, but hopefully I get there this winter so that I'm able to plant it out next spring. Hopefully next spring as well, I'll be planting boxwood plants here in the front of the vegetable garden. Eventually I'd like boxwoods to come up and cover up the fencing, so I'm about 4 foot tall. And I think it will give it a more formal look. It'll also hide clutter and other things that are in there that I don't necessarily want people to see all the time. Obviously, again, on the other side here, we have the continuation of the dahlias, and I will show you all that in a close-up right now. If you haven't watched my dahlia garden tour, please go back, watch the dahlia garden tour. I go over each of my dahlias, what they are and aren't doing. Here I'm just going to kind of glance over them real quick because I don't want this video to be too long, and I already have a sneaking suspicion it's going to be too long. Okay, so here we've got some of my dahlias, Franz Kafka, Marry Me. Some of these have gotten knocked back throughout the year for various reasons. Ants or something else, I don't know. This has been the clear winner this year. This is Clearview Daniel, and it just keeps on putting on these lovely flowers. They're not ball dahlias, they're something else I believe. But either way, they're absolutely lovely, and this plant has been definitely performing over and above and beyond. If we walk to the other side, Winky Kernel, this was one that was knocked back by fire ants. And then we have the Pretty Woman Dark Angel. It's a low growing plant. So when I build, if and when I build my dahlia garden next year, this will go towards the front of the beds so that you can see them more clearly. And this has also been a good producer for me this year. Arabian Night. This one has been a really good producer. See if we can get an angle over here to this one. This is fully open. It's been a very good producer, and it's growing quite well. Some of these others, Eveline has not done well. Voodoo got knocked back, but it is kind of coming back. Miss Rose Fletcher is a bomb. Picasso, Diva. Paintball got knocked back, but it's coming back. And Sterling Silver Moon, I believe it's called, or Midnight Moon, I'm not sure. Either one, those got knocked back, didn't recover. Southern Belle is recovering, so maybe there's still a chance to see some flowers from it this fall. I said it in the beginning of the year, and it still holds true. The vegetable garden is the cornerstone to the rest of the garden. It's the thing I've put the most effort and energy into. It's something that's still not complete. I have to do the back wall of fencing. I have to build 3 more gates, and I have to mount 4 gates. So there's still a lot of work to do. It is still a space that is evolving. I have more wood chips to put down for the walkways here because I don't want to be cutting all this grass. Grass does grow here quite well during the summertime. It grows quite vigorously, and I'd like to put down the wood chips to help keep it down, and also this way I don't have to do that. Before I do though, continue with the rest of the garden, I just wanted to point out my Mammoth Sunflowers. Now I'm 5'9". These guys are pretty awesome. So I will definitely be growing Mammoth Sunflowers in the future. These sunflowers in front of it are Del Sols. They also performed pretty well. They've actually gone over to seed already, which is pretty cool. I will let them do their thing. They've So the heads, some of these heads are also flopping over because they're also going to seed, which is fine. Again, just I could deadhead them. Maybe I will deadhead a few because theoretically if I deadhead them, they'll throw up new flowers. And it's only early September, so mid-September. Again, we don't get a frost here for a while, so I will see maybe about that. But that I don't want to get carried away with that right now. My tomatoes have come up. I have basil that I'm slowly taking up. My loofah, I think my loofah is finally starting to peter out. I'm not sure, it's just growing like crazy. I threw some zinnia in the ground, and I'll give you a close-up of the zinnia in a minute. And that actually has seemed to take off well. Greek oregano, I didn't do anything with this year. I just wanted to start growing things, so I bought seeds and I started doing various things with seeds, like just throwing them into the ground and see what would happen. Greek oregano has done well. These basils are going to flower. Again, we'll take a look at that in a minute. I'm going to leave them alone because I can see pollinators are doing their thing right now. So I will let them go to flower, and that's fine. Cucumber plant has been really weird this year. It died, it came back, it died again, or seemed to be dying, but it still seems to be chugging along and producing. So I'm going to leave this alone until I see it not producing no more. The variety I grew this year was green finger cucumbers, so there's a lot more meat and a lot less seeds. Wonderful taste, good variety. I highly recommend it. Another basil. Again, I'll probably just leave this guy alone, let him run amok. And over here in this bed, I don't know if you can see that in the shot. If not, we'll do a close-up in a second. I have beans that I planted for the fall. And looking at them right now, they're looking pretty good, so bingo. Nothing in this bed. In this bed, I just planted some lettuce. I have dynamite lettuce and salad bowl lettuce. I've never successfully grown winter greens, as it were, so I'm going to try that here this year and see how that works out. In this bed, I planted up some seed potatoes that I'd gotten from my early summer harvest, and so far I've only gotten one pop-up. Maybe that's all that'll happen. Live and learn, give it a try, see what happens, see what grows, learn from those experiences. Let me give you a close-up of some of this stuff now. So here are the green beans that I just planted up recently. I don't remember the variety of these, but again, as you can see, they seem to be doing pretty well. And as long as the deer and other critters stay off of them and the bugs don't get to them, then I think hopefully I'll have a good fall harvest. Here is the cucumber, which is looking a little ratty and a little tough, but if I can zoom in here, I still have cucumbers growing. There's one there, and here's a weird one right there. So they're still growing. Over here, this is the basil, which is going to flower. And I don't know if you can see, I got some pollinators flopping around there. Here are some of the zinnia. I just threw them into the ground to see what would happen. And yeah, they've grown, which is great. And here's the loofah. Next year, I'm going to do a different trellis system. I'm going to get something that arches over 2 beds. And I'll just let this grow up and over the 2 beds, because as it is now, you really can't see the fruit on the inside. And there is fruit, and I'll do a video on that soon. And it's growing. It just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. I've actually had to trim it back somewhat because otherwise it just keeps going. In fact, I'll probably trim back this vine here because it's just getting out of control. Here's the bed where the tomatoes were. Now I just have some old basil and I have mushrooms. I also have some onions. I have about 5 onions that have survived, and one of them seems to be a-okay-ish. Looks like he might be even ready to harvest soon, so we'll leave him alone. The others do not seem like they're ready to harvest at all, and I'm not sure what to do about that, but we'll see. Again, here are my sunflowers. These are the mammoths, which are mammoth. If you follow me on Instagram, then you'll see I've posted pictures of these guys recently, and again, just incredible. This is the bed where I have the fall crop of potatoes and nothing growing except for that one guy there. Well, we'll see what happens with that, and of course, if you subscribe to the channel, you can keep updated to all of this. This is where I planted the lettuce, and that's my one rogue potato. I say rogue because he was probably from the spring potatoes that I had, and he's just growing now. Okay, in this bed here with some bird netting over it, I have some carrots growing. Now looking at the bed, it seems a bit sporadic. I have a few here, a few there, a few there, a few there. I know I planted a lot more, but they're growing, so again, I really can't complain. We just had some rain, which is wonderful, and these are, in case you're wondering, metal raised beds. I purchased them from Epic Gardening. If I remember, I'll leave a link below. I'm totally not sponsored by them. I'm not sponsoring nothing, but these beds are very nice because they're high, so I don't have to bend over as much as with the other raised beds. Eventually, my hope, my dream, my plan is to replace the 8 low beds with these tall beds going forward. So as I get older, because I'm approaching 50, and before you know it and you blink, you'll be 60, and before you know it and you blink, you'll be 70. So, but I'll be replacing the low beds with the high beds if all goes well. And again, won't have to bend over so much, easier to move and reach around in. This bed back here, I just recently finished filling, so there's nothing in this bed. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with this bed at this point. I'm thinking maybe taking those cups of boxwoods and just putting them into this bed for over the winter. And yeah, maybe I'll do that, and this way they're off the potting bench. I'm not sure at this point. As you can see, I still have wood chips behind me, so I'll be working on those now that the weather's starting to break and it's starting to get cooler. Today's supposed to get up to about 80, and believe it or not, that's fairly cool. And there's also a lovely breeze blowing out today. So the wood chips will eventually be going away, and big news, I'm getting a greenhouse. It's on order. Hopefully it gets here in February, and it'll be basically going right over here, and I'll show you that in a second. Okay, so where you're standing, or where you're sitting on your couch looking at me, but that's going to be the central walkway coming into the vegetable garden. Right here is going to be the walkway from the west side to the east side, or east side to west side. There'll be a walkway there. This will all be left as grass for the immediate future. Down the road, I would like to do brick or stone pavers, because the less that I have to mow in here, the better. It'll also make a nicer environment to be walking around in and not have to worry about ticks, that kind of thing. But behind me where I stand, where all these bags are, I don't know if you can see the bags, is going to be the greenhouse. Let me jump back here. So basically where I am here, 8 foot wide, 12 foot long, is going to be a greenhouse. I've had to special order this, and I've had to pay a little extra to give it as much wind resistance as possible, because I do live in an area which is prone to hurricanes. Nothing is bulletproof. This greenhouse will not be bulletproof, as it were, nor will it be hurricane proof. But if we get a category 1 or category 2, hopefully the greenhouse itself will be able to withstand that, because again, I am paying a little extra for that. But if we don't get any hurricanes, which cross our fingers and hopes and prayers we don't, again, the greenhouse is supposed to be here in February. I'll be recording all that and filming all that. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe so you don't miss that. You don't have to watch every single one of my videos. I understand not everybody is going to be interested in dahlias, or not everybody's going to be interested in tomatoes or carrots or whatever the case may be. But, you know, I am building out a garden on 1.5 acres here in eastern North Carolina. You may be interested to see how that process evolves and what projects I'm doing next, and how every space evolves over time. And this is going to be a long-term endeavor. But right here will be the greenhouse. So hopefully we get that built in February, maybe March, and then I can even start some seeds into it until it probably starts to get too hot in April, May internally. And that may be the case, in which case I'll probably wind up getting shade cloth for that during the year. And I probably won't be able to use it throughout the summer, maybe a little bit in the fall. Now the winter time, that's probably when it'll get some use as well. I can grow things throughout the winter when it's too cold to grow outside, and they'll be protected from frost, etc. So I can, you know, maybe grow some radishes, lettuce, you know, throughout the winter. The winter here is very short. It's probably like January, February. By March, it starts warming up. There's still some nighttime freezes, but it starts warming up quite a bit in March. And by April, we're into spring already. I would also probably like to look down the road of maybe getting some more tropical plants, maybe a banana or something else that wouldn't necessarily survive a winter here in zone 8, 8A, but if I bring it into the greenhouse throughout the winter, it'll be fine. So again, these are things that I'd like to do down the road, hence the reason I decided to invest in and purchase a greenhouse. All these bags have to move. I'm going to get a cement pad to put this on, and I think that's about all I have to say about that for now. Again, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe, and then you find out how that process goes along. All right, believe it or not, this long video is going to start winding down now. We're getting close to the end. So here we are in the last bit of the vegetable garden that I wanted to talk about. I had my corn over here. The corn was an epic failure. I left the cobs on the stems too long. And after a couple of days of rain, those cobs, those corn kernels inside, they started getting moldy. So I left them there too long. I should have harvested them before the rain. I was afraid they weren't fully ripened. You win some, you lose some, you learn. So they've been ripped out. This is bush sugar baby melon, watermelon over here. I've harvested a few already. The one I just harvested recently, it didn't seem like it was fully done yet, which was kind of odd because it had all the signs that the experts say, that the vine nearby it starts to die off. The tendril that's on the vine, that starts to die off. So it looked like it was done, but when we cut it open, it wasn't ripened. Looking now, I see there's one that has some black spots on it. That one's probably done. It won't grow anymore. It's dying. And I have another one over here that still may be a chance. So we'll let that go. But the watermelons overall, I would say is a success. I got one big, beautiful watermelon. It was delicious. It was good. We grew that here. I'll probably do that again next year. So that's something that I'm excited. Once these come up, I'm gonna, forgive if you hear any noise, the landscapers down the road just decided to start doing their thing. Once these come up, I'm gonna cover this whole thing with weed cloth to not kill back the grass, give the ground a chance to rest. Next spring, I'll throw a ton of fresh compost on top of it, start all over again. I don't know if I'll do corn and melon or how that'll all work, but you'll have to wait until next spring. Over here I have pumpkin, and I have two varieties, Jack B. Little and Howden. Now I'm going to say the Howden was a failure. I see no signs of Howden growing at all. The seeds, the vines did grow, and it looks like I had gotten some flowers, but no pumpkin. I don't know why. The Jack B. Littles are small pumpkins, and I'll show you those close up in a second, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, at least a dozen of them. So I don't know. I'll definitely probably be growing the Jack B. Littles again because it's fun. And if you're not gardening for fun, then come on. So I'll probably grow them again. The Howdens, I would like to give another shot at. I don't know why they didn't grow, or maybe there's another variety of pumpkin which grows better in growing zone 8A. I will have to research that and see. And in front of that, all the way back here, is a bed which I've been throwing grass clippings on, wood chips, grass clippings, wood chips, grass clippings. That will hopefully rot down by next spring, and if it does, I may start some grapes there. I'm thinking the back corner of putting a little patio area in, so that throughout the winter, spring, when you can sit outside, when it's nice enough and it's not broiling hot, you know, just a little something there, a little bistro set or something. I'm thinking. I'll probably wind up putting a fire pit back there first to start burning up some excess wood chips and excess wood that I have around the property, things like that, and that ash can then also go on to some of the beds to help give them nutrients. So let me show you the close-up of the pumpkins. So here are some of the Jack B. Little pumpkins, and you can see they are fairly small. They're probably about half the size of a baseball. They're itty-bitty, but they're cute. And they're doing their thing. And I have a bunch more over here. I believe these are also Jack B. Littles. So that's it for these. So maybe the Howden didn't do so well, but the Jack B. Littles did. I don't know. Again, subscribe to the channel. I'll keep you updated. We're standing in the beginnings of the rose garden. When I was planning out the 1.5 acres, and again, forgive me for any background noise. I don't know what will be picked up here. There's yard work going on down the road, and cicadas are starting to get a little loud. When I decided to start building out the garden here on 1.5 acres, Again, I knew I wanted a large vegetable garden, something I could grow into, space that would be fairly protected from the deer. Again, everything will evolve, everything will change. 4-foot fences aren't going to keep out deer, but it may deter them. Either way, I decided I wanted rose garden. I like roses, there's something about it, and I think my appreciation or love of roses came from the fact that my grandfather used to grow roses. He had a couple of rose bushes, I believe, in Florida, and I think even one in New York. He liked them. They were a simple plant to maintain and take care of. So again, I guess that's where it all came from. So I started building out a rose garden. I decided early on, which I'm almost now regretting, I wanted 12-foot deep beds. The privet hedges will get to approximately 4 feet wide, 3 to 4 feet wide, so that eats up a chunk of space. Each of the rose bushes go from anywhere from 4 foot to 6 foot wide. So again, I want to leave room for them, and then bordering along the edges of the rose garden, I wanted there to be boxwoods that I'll keep about 2 foot tall, just to give it a more formal look. You can do rose gardens apparently in, well, you could do anything you want. I mean, you know, but I've seen rose gardens done formally and sort of informally. I like the more formal style. And overall, that's kind of what the garden is going to have, is a slightly more formal style. It's not going to be very formal. I don't have the manpower or the energy to keep it very formal, but it will be semi-formal, let's call it, with a lot of straight lines, hedging, that kind of thing. But in the rose garden, I want to keep things fairly formal. So again, I will have metal edging. I have my Mr. Lincoln rose right up front here. He's put on some new growth since I planted him out, which is great. And since he's been moved twice before, and roses apparently don't like to be moved around too much, this is where he's going to stay forever and ever and ever. Again, 4 privet hedges in the back in the section I've already done. I put a dwarf Yupon over behind next to Mr. Lincoln. I'm not going to have rose bushes shoulder to shoulder in this area. I want it to be sort of broken up. I may do a drift here or there where I may have 3 or 4 of the same type of rose bushes in certain areas. Again, that'll be seen, but for this area right here, this space, Mr. Lincoln, I have a dwarf Yupon. I'll do one of the other David Austins. I'll probably space that out with another bush. I have a sprinter boxwood that needs to be planted out, so maybe I'll put that next to that one, so on and so on and so forth down the line. Now at the end of the black weed fabric, that's going to be the end of the first run. Then we'll cut across, again, 60 feet that way. If you've been following along on my rose garden build out, thank you. At the end of this year, I'll probably start another what am I looking for? Another playlist called Rose Garden, and I'll put everything into that. Right now I think we're up to episode 5 or something like that, part 5, whatever you want to call it. And there'll be many, many, many more parts to go as I build out this space. But again, 60 feet across, and then it'll come back about 60 feet and then along the back. And there'll be other things in the rose garden besides roses. For instance, and I don't know if you could see it here, and I'll probably do a close-up of it, I have some daisies. I have a couple of daisies. I believe they're banana cream daisies. I have them here in the front. And again, the dwarf Yupon, and I plan on doing some other shopping online soon to pick up a few more plants to interdisperse these. One of them might be a hibiscus. I'm thinking about putting a hibiscus in here. So there's a lot more to come. There's a lot more dirt to move. There's a lot more edging to be put into place. There's a lot of work to go. Again, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. Let me give you a quick look down the rest of the property and give you a quick, brief overview of that, and then we can wrap this up. Okay, sorry about that. So now, right here next to me, you see all these wood chips and grass clippings and stuff. This is a compost pile that I started that I'm just putting wood chips, grass clippings, that kind of thing into, maybe some tree branches, some leaves. This will constantly get turned and filled in, and I'll do that all throughout the winter, and maybe by next spring I can start drawing from it, or in a couple of years start drawing from it to use here in the rose garden, because I'm going to need tons and tons of compost to improve the soil, to build out those beds, to plant into. If we look out over this way, and I'm looking at the viewfinder so I can see where I am in relation. If you look out over, no, not that way. way back there, okay, there is another wood pile, and beyond that there's a dark spot, and that dark spot is where the orchard is going to be. That other wood chip pile, those again will be broken down into compost. That compost will be used throughout the garden. So the trees that I had taken down earlier in the year as I started building out this space are not going to waste. All the material is going to be turned into compost or walkway, wood chips for the walkways, and they'll be used here in the garden. And as I even cut down tree branches or remove certain things, nothing's really going to waste. It's just sort of being repurposed. Now, this space over here behind me, okay, where you see that sort of large clump of things, I'm going to trim that up and maybe even remove that all the way back to the tree. That's going to be now another garden, and that probably, I may start that even next year if I have a good idea as to what that will be. There's some grassy spaces on the other side of that. I don't know what I'll do with that, but eventually I'd like to fill out, again, the 1.5 acres that I'm on and continue to grow this garden, adding in flower gardens. And actually now I'm thinking maybe I can make that like a little shady garden, writing garden perhaps. Yeah, writing garden with some shade and a couple of deciduous trees. See, we're getting ideas already. But that's down the road. So that's going to be wrapping up for today. I'm sorry if this is too long. If you've stuck around to the end, thank you very much. Thank you to all my new subscribers. Please tell your friends, families, loved ones. Grumpy old guy across the street, I've got this wacky channel. I'm trying to give myself heat stroke, skin cancer, and trying to do myself in by building a garden here in Eastern North Carolina, Zone 8A. My name is Jason, and I thank you. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. You never know new antics I'm going to get up to next. There's a lot to go. There's a lot to be done. There's a lot going on, always. If you haven't seen any of my YouTube shorts, please go back, look at my YouTube shorts, check the playlists. I have a playlist on YouTube shorts. Leave comments below. If you like these videos, if you don't like these videos, give it a thumbs up, thumbs down. Again, let me know, give me some feedback here. It helps the YouTube algorithm, helps me, and lets me know that people are watching there. If you don't follow me on Instagram, give a follow on Instagram. I often post up pictures there that you won't, of stuff that you won't necessarily see here on YouTube. I like to keep content a little different. If you'd like to support the channel, I have a merch store. So you can check out those links below in the description. You can get yourself a mug with the Growing Green Finger logo on it. You can get yourself a t-shirt. Fall and winter are coming. It's a perfect time to get yourself a hoodie. That, I think, is going to wrap it up for today. I thank you. You have a fantastic day. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.